So I've been looking
Yes.
forward to talking to you, man. I have been so looking forward to talking to you. I don't know when the last time it is that we've actually had just a conversation. And the cool thing about Andrew, who you've been able to talk to a little bit here as we've all been getting ready, is that if I was like creating a dream like get together, like just like we're gonna hang out somewhere, you're in town or whatever, Andrew is like one of my like go-to dudes that I would want you to like come into town and like hang out with. And I think that's part of the reason why we're doing this, because like Andrew and I just enjoy talking and hanging out anyway. We love asking questions. We love really getting curious with people. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for jumping in. I don't even know what we're going to end up talking about, and that's Andrew and I's favorite when we don't.
Me too.
Believe it or not, I do not have my second monitor here with. So, Bill, I looked up and saw that you were born in this town.
Yes.
I looked up your astrological chart. If you could just talk a little bit more about that. No, I don't know where we're going to go, but thank you for joining.
I'm here for it. I love freeform. When I'm on other podcasts and they're very like specific and like a niche or like, a certain segment that they're speaking to their audience, they'll even say like, I've got questions. I can send them to you beforehand if you want to see them. And I'm kind of like, if you want to, that's cool. But like, I don't care. I literally don't care. Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to answer them how I would answer them. I might be a little bit more prepared, but it doesn't mean it'll be that much better. So I'm here for the big conversation.
I'm curious because you're doing this. I've been seeing you on Instagram. You're doing more recordings. I'm seeing more stuff show up. So I'm curious some of your thoughts about this meta thing. I'll tell you one of mine is that because obviously podcasts have been popular for a while now, but the way that I was thinking about it when Andrew kind of was like, hey, what if we did some of these conversations? What if we did this? It's like, I want to do it because the process itself is something that doesn't feel like work, that the doing of the thing itself is fun, because I put so much pressure on myself in my life and anything related to my career, my entrepreneurships, so much pressure on myself. And I was like, I don't really want to add one more work thing to the plate. And it was when like the flip switched, and I was like, and I can even feel it now, right? Like I've had a really busy week and I've had a really busy morning, and I was like, oh man, we are talking to Bill today, and I actually think we're doing another conversation after we have one with you. And I was like, do I have the energy for this? And the funny thing is, always about 10 to 15 minutes before it's time to jump on and start talking to somebody, I actually feel the gravity pull into it, right? And that's like a rare thing for me professionally. Every once in a while, I get into those flow states, and it's the best feeling, but where you're not like, okay, all right, work is work sometimes. Yeah. Let's just grind through it. And then doing this, that work is work feeling, it just kind of slips away. I'm like, oh, wait, no, I'm excited. I'm good. I feel good about sitting down, even if I'm like tired from the rest of the day. So that was the one thing I was going to say. And the second thing I was going to say is, being able to be really loose with format, I think, is also better for this world we live in, where sometimes you might talk for an hour, hour and a half, and you end up stumbling upon 4 or 5 incredible clips. So I don't need to worry so hard about like holding on with my fists really tight about like, we got to hit this point and hit that point. And even when I was like studying journalism in my master's program, it was like they were giving us all these incredible like NPR tips and like put everything into quadrants. And it doesn't matter if Bill's telling the most incredible story. If you hit that like 15-minute mark and you got to get the 3 next questions, because that's what the deliverable is, you got to hard pivot out of this stuff.
Interesting.
And so I had a lot of that I was thinking about bringing into what we were going to do. And then it's been so much better to be like, we'll have a conversation that we would actually have if we were at dinner. And there'll probably be like 3 or 4 amazing parts. And a lot of people will probably just watch that 2-minute, 3-minute thing, might not watch the whole hour and a half. So like, let go a little bit and relax and just see where it goes, and know that good moments will happen. So anyway, that is my, that's kind of been the mantra that I've been taking into it. And I say all that because I'm also equally curious what it's been like for you, because we met over 10 years ago, I think. And when we did, I don't think either of us were doing regular video content. So I'm curious, like, if you don't mind, just share a little bit about like what you've been doing or why you've been doing it or what you've been learning. I kind of want to hear, because some of the stuff I've been seeing, and I swear to God, I'm not just flattering you, has been easily turn the audio on. I don't know what the word would be for that, because we're all kind of like,
you go down to the bottom right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Whatever that is, because we're more passively viewing, and that's why we like subtitles too. But your videos, I actually find myself stopping and be like, all right, I'll actually see what they're talking about here. I want to hear it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some of that has to do with just our relationship and knowing each other for so long, but I appreciate that. It's funny, video actually performs very poorly for me right now, for what it's worth. Just throwing that out there. Of the content I create, which is now very often, that's essentially my job as CEO in the company, is like content machine. Thankfully, I love it. The video side is kind of like, womp womp. But hey, I'm here for it. I create it. I know that I think it just needs time for my audience kind of thing. So far, my audience, given my background, which is like straight up designer, visual stuff crushes for me, right?
Yeah.
I share the work that we're doing and I lay it out in a particular way and I talk about what we did and how we did it. That content crushes. A conversation like this, even a clip of it, if it's like such a powerful point, people scrolling right by that shit. They just scroll. You can just tell. I can tell from the stats. They scroll right by it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to hit every form of content there is. And I've really enjoyed it. So to your point, I feel the same way. There are a lot of things that I do in my job and I love my business. I've been building it for 14 years. Some of it feels like high drain of energy.
Mm-hmm.
When I get on my recordings, which I do with our clients post project, I would have loved to do this with you, Charlie, back in the day if we were doing this back then, which is at the end of every project, I give it like maybe 3 months. I do a recording with that client and we talk about, hey, let's relive your project together.
Oh man.
Let's talk about the shit that was like really hard and scary. The things that you were nervous about that now you can laugh about because they're not so scary in hindsight. What were your biggest wins? And I do that in an effort to really uncover what a rebrand is like.
Yeah.
You can read all the case studies we have and every other agency that's ever done like awesome work, and you still can't get a grasp of what it's really like. So all that to say, I get such a high coming out of those recordings. I just did one yesterday. I come out of those recordings literally like fueled, not drained, the opposite direction. They jack me up. So I love it. Because I love it, I'm going to continue to do them. I don't give a shit if they don't perform well.
Right.
That's not necessarily the only goal to make your point again, Charlie. And I'm going to open my first beer on that note.
Do it, please. Yeah, I got this. Cheers, a digital cheers. Something we want to do is have something that we can all kind of like, we're remote, but you still get that idea of we're having a beer, we're having a coffee together. So.
Oh, Voodoo Ranger. I got an IPA.
This is one thing I'm hearing from you though is that when I get to the editing stage and I'm clipping my favorite conversations that we end up having today, I can go through and find some of your newest favorite designs and just use that as B-roll to put on top of whatever you're saying to drive my engagement.
That's the bait, right? Cool. People want to see pretty stuff.
Yeah.
That will never not be the case. And I would also say that like the market might be fairly flooded in its current state with a lot of this type of content. Yeah, but who gives a shit if we like doing it and we want to talk and even a couple people get value, success as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I have two thoughts about that, and then I really want to hear what Andrew's opinion is on all this too, because believe it or not, Andrew and I have not talked about this topic that much. We are recording a podcast together. We've done like 7 interviews, and we actually have not talked about any of this with each other. So the one thing I was going to say, something that really inspired me is I was listening to this guy, and he was like, he's like actually some hedge fund guy, but he seems like he has a soul, and he's really interesting to listen to. And he was talking about how he was a big believer in video content continuing and podcast continuing because he's saying it's very low status but has actual value. He's like, that's where he's interested in going, is things that people like, you're at a party and you might like feel a certain way about how you might perceived when you say like, oh, this weekend, like one of the things I'm doing is I'm recording my podcast, I'm doing video. Like it has a certain stigma or a certain feeling. So it's low status. So not a lot of people aren't trying to flood there, but actually, if you look at how the world's changing and where content's happening and where a lot of value is happening, it is in this kind of thing. And that was like a big thing. I was like, yeah, you know what? I want to get over myself. I don't want to be so like in my own head about like, oh, another white guy doing a podcast. I'm like, that. How is that helpful for anything? That's just like me getting in the own way of creation and reaching out to friends and having good conversation and seeing what opens up from it. So that was like something that really helped me think about it. But I do want you to know when I do that clip, I really will have the B-roll on it. And I'm excited to edit that specific one for you and send it to you so you can see. So I'm going to have you're going to need to share some designs, or, you know, maybe I'll do is maybe I'll show some of my favorite designs that you guys did.
There you go.
For us. Because I still
even
like
better.
Acre, for example, which is this co-working space.
Oh my God.
That my sister and I worked on and was branded by Bill's company, is still to this day one of my favorite brands. And I'm still holding on to it. Like who knows? Like maybe I'll be able to re-release it in some form or fashion because we created this awesome co-working space, so beautiful, and then COVID hit, and we're like,
I mean, could this not be the new version of the Acre brand? Is there not this idea of like conversations and landscapes and parcels of land? And
yeah, all right, Andrew,
is
we're
that a
rebranding.
stretch?
All right,
Okay.
and right now at this moment in the conversation on the YouTube, Acre's just gonna hit, and we're now the Acre podcast. I feel like it would actually go really well with Andrew's current career. But Andrew, I'm curious, like what your thoughts you have, especially since you've been recording. I'm sure since we started like a month ago, people have been at you to come up in conversation, and you probably noticed either how other people react or how you think about what other people would think and doing, or any of that. We haven't talked about it at all, have we?
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, to your point, prior to recording, I was very hesitant to say, oh, I'm starting a podcast and we're going to do video, audio, and it's going to have multiple channels that were up. I don't recall I was never excited to talk about the podcast. I was always excited to find out who was going to be on, what guests we can get, and where the conversation would go. And that to me is what was the green light to do it. Because if my only excitement came from just talking about it and telling people that I was doing it, then it was for nothing. And that was nothing that I wanted to service. So I don't really have an opinion about, is there too much content? Is there not enough content? That part of it doesn't interest me in terms of where I look for information. The part that interests me is, does this serve a need that I have, and do I feel fulfilled at the end of it? And then to your point earlier, Bill, when you said you get energy from these, after every one of these podcasts, regardless of how it's gone, regardless of where the conversation went or what little preparedness that I had going in, I always text Charlie and go, fuck, dude, that was awesome. Like, I feel like I want to continue that conversation. And where all that started was we went to dinner in LA, and he invited one of his friends that I had never met. And his girlfriend Kat was there. And I think that was the first time I had met her, maybe an hour before that dinner at your apartment. And we sat down and had a dinner. We were there for like 3.5 hours. And the dinner went by in like minutes. And there was like this energy, this feeling that's like, okay, regardless of whatever happens after this, like, how do we do that part again? How does that thing live on? And I think that's where this kind of came from, and why I think
especially with you in Nashville and me in LA, and that not looking like it's going to change anytime soon, right? Are you ready for your world to feel really small, Andrew? The woman that you're talking about is Lauren Jones, which, believe it or not, I met because of Bill.
Wow. So we're going to pull a lot of small worlds together here. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, even hearing her talk about what she does and how she pushes in that way from a creative landscape, we all, like, I don't know shit about photography. I'm the last person on the planet that should have an opinion or any direction to give in that space, period. But there was no hesitation to the conversation. There were no roadblocks. There were no barriers. And, I give a lot of that compliment to Charlie, because Charlie's like this crazy conduit of like comfortability and like making everybody feel at ease, and just like shit that I wouldn't talk about with people that I didn't know just starts pouring out of my fucking mouth every time I'm in the room with Charlie. And I love it. I'm addicted to it. It's like this, this drug I can't get enough of.
Yeah, Charlie,
you're welcome,
you are a special human being in that way.
My dude.
I love that. Lauren.
Hey, check this. Bill, I've learned this. I've learned how to do this. It took years of therapy. Thank you. I learned not to,
look at that.
Deflect.
Yeah. Oh, you guys. It's not a thing. Yes.
No, you.
You have a special superpower, and I'm glad that you see it and you can recognize it and say thank you back. Yes, you do have that. You are very much a conduit of relationship. Here's another. Hey, let's pour on Charlie for a minute and make him feel really uncomfortable.
I'm already there, so yeah, let's go ahead. Go for it.
I was talking to my son. My son's 14. He's a great kid. Really, really reserved. Really got his head screwed on right. He's not a pain in the ass. He's very respectful. All the adults around us tell us Riker is so mature. He's the one kid of the group that can have a conversation with an adult and look them in the eye and be very present, right? So he's a really good kid. He's at the age now, though, where he's getting to this, like, I'm talking to girls now, and I'm in environments that, like, I want to present myself in a certain way to girls, and I could tell he's very uncomfortable. So he's been going to these parties, which are essentially like just like 6 kids hanging out at a house when the sun's out. And he came back from one of them, and I'm like, so how'd it go? He's like, oh, it was real awkward. I kind of like sat in the corner in a chair, and I didn't know what to say. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just kind of played it off, whatever. But then another party was coming up, and this is where I'm going to get to Charlie. Charlie's like, how did these dots connect? Another party was coming up, and I went downstairs. It was just me and him. These are not mom conversations. So I said, Rex, come here. Let me talk to you for a minute. And there's something that I learned from you, Charlie, that has really gone a long way for me, honestly. And I passed this through to my son, and it literally worked in this moment. I said, listen, you need to change the conversation from you just trying to find your way into it and actually asking people questions that get them excited. And you've done this to me multiple times, Charlie. We sit down for dinner, we meet in the city, and you say things like, what are you most excited about, like in your life right now? Like, what's getting you jacked up? And when you say that, you are so genuine. Like, you want to hear what I'm actually excited about. It's a very open door for me now to open up myself to you and feel heard. And now we get going. The rhythm is there. So I basically gave him that same insight. I'm like, when you go in there, when you sit next to these girls, don't talk to them about video games and airplanes and wonder why they're not reciprocating. Only make it about them. Ask them, what's the summer trip you're most excited about going on this year? And just let them pour into that. And maybe they might say Puerto Rico, and you can say, I just went there. It's so awesome, isn't it? That was like, he came home. I said, how'd it go? Father, son, right? How did it go? He's like, it was epic. It was awesome. I talked to everybody. I'm like, okay, you got it. So that was a long story, but a subtle way to say that you are a special human being. You open people up, Charlie. And that is still making its way through the system. Riker might be telling his kid how to open people up. So props to you. I know this was not your goal of the podcast, but here we are.
My heart, like, honestly, my chest like feels really warm right now, like legitimately. I really appreciate that. I do think curiosity is probably the thing I'm proudest of, because it also is something that feels pure relative to so many other skills that you pick up. Not that, certain skills have to feel like they're impure, but like curiosity, I'm just a curious person. And I think that's the trick too, right? Is that you can read all of these books about how to ask questions, how to be really diplomatic, how to be really strategic, how to network. And I think the difference is the people that actually are interested. So they're not just trying to find a way to get you to talk, but they're actually like finding a way to get themselves invested in what you're talking about. And so, yeah, Andrew, luckily my co-host also has the same ability. And I just want to share, this feels like a natural dance thing, not just a reactionary thing, like just the dance of conversations, because it came to mind. But I want to share with Andrew part of the superpower that I learned from you that I think is really interesting. And I kind of want to get Andrew's thoughts or takes on this, because I'm sure you've gone through some hiring of designers, working with designers in all the stuff you've done, Andrew, especially on the restaurant front. I feel like that is probably something that people obsess over as far as branding and what's going to get people in the door and everything. And so when I first found Bill way long time ago, one of the superpowers, one of the things I realized like I really wanted to figure out is, okay, people are coming to me and they want me to like produce like magic. They have something in their head that they know is possible, but they don't know how to create it. And it's probably more of a feeling than anything. And they're not really good at putting into words actually what that feeling is. And then they want you to come back from 3 weeks, 6 weeks in the woods or whatever, and basically be like, tomorrow we're going to get the email, and the thing I've been dreaming about and imagined, but I don't know how to say what it looks like because I don't know, is going to be there. And what I picked up on really quickly, because I was like I was basically at that point, I was like a middleman for my dad. I was like working my way up through the family business, and I was like in charge of trying to help on some digital stuff. But my dad was 1,000% like the person in charge of trying to figure out what we were going to do and what we were going to pick. And I think Bill had, a ton of different directions, but really like was putting it down into 3 clear options. And what I remember most was this idea of like, here's what I would do, and I might just be a little bit more progressive or aggressive or passionate about this area than you might be willing to go. But this is where I think is something really exciting. Here's something that I think is totally dependable and something that would be great, and you don't have to worry about it. And here's like a third option. And whatever it was more about the emotion setting of these 3 different options than anything else. and letting the person choose. And I remember in that moment realizing that my dad was dealing with that thing that I think I've seen a lot of over 10 years. And I've done so many branding projects now that a lot of people deal with, which is that realization that whatever I'm imagining or feeling in my head, and then that other person coming to me, it is very often going to be disappointing. Even if it's incredible work, even if it's like something that you really would want. And so then the superpower, what I saw is, yeah, you could be a kick-ass designer, sure, and that's amazing. But the actual relationship and the exchange of a client in real time, in the aftermath of the real hypothetical like disappointment they might be having from whatever they conjured or however they wanted to feel. And I even relate it to like how often we want our partner in a relationship, or a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, to mind read in some way, and then we get upset that they can't. Even if we rationally know they can't, we still feel this like, oh man, but like, shouldn't they?
Yes.
Right? And I actually think that people become so attached and in love with this idea of identity. My identity will be in what this thing looks like, what the sign will look like, what the website will look like, what my restaurant will say. And Bill, you and your team, you're the magicians that can tap into me and find this thing and mind read. This, I know I'm saying a lot, but it's because I find it so interesting. Like the element of, obviously you have to be good at design, right? And make really beautiful, incredibly effective things. But that's not what I picked up on. What I picked up on was this idea of like, if you really want great work out there and you really want to help people have great work, sometimes you actually have to lead them towards the thing that wasn't in their head, that wasn't in their chest, that they didn't have feelings for, but they will. And they will eventually look back and be like, how could have I ever chosen anything else? But in that first moment when they've been waiting and they've been letting their excitement get away from them and they're looking at your PDF, you know? So I don't know how that resonates or doesn't resonate with you, Bill, but that is something that I think you are profoundly good at. And it's almost a feeling of like safety and confidence that you're distilling with the person on the other side.
Words. That's the words. It's safety.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you have to create a zone of safety. This is going to be hard. We're not magicians. You're going to have feelings about it that I won't even be able to tap into, because who knows what you've experienced in your life that relate to a particular color, shape, feel, texture, all that stuff. So we have to come together as people too in this relationship of a brand, which is design and words and these types of things. And yeah, what an impossible task. When you say it like that, I sit back going like, who signs up for that shit? Meaning on my side, who signs up for that? Oh, you have a dream in your mind and I'm going to try to make it. Did I get it? No, you suck. Ah, shit. You're right. I suck. Let me try again. That is an overwhelming task for some. And then there's some crazy suckers like myself and our team that are up for that task. Let me mention, week after week after week after week. We literally ship work every single week, and we've been doing it for 14 years. Try to think about that hamster wheel of trying to unpack people's minds and send it to them every single week for 14 years. When people say, I've had enough, Bill, I love this company, but I've been here 7 years, I'm ready to go. I go, I feel you, brother. I get it. Thank you for your service. I'm gonna try to hold the fort down.
That's I can't even. I 14 years. I don't think I realized it had been that long, and I also don't think I realized that you're saying you're still doing designing, right? Like you still do actual design.
Let me be clear. No. So no.
Okay.
The easy answer is no. I don't design anything. I'm still riffing on my own on certain things here and there, and I jump into like, oh, I see what you're trying to make. I made things like that 4 years ago. Here's my like file.
Right.
My team is stronger, better, faster than me at that point. I bring all the value you're talking about, which is more of that relational and like the EQ factor. Is that the right word? Emotional intelligence, right?
I think so.
This side to help people get past the subjective of design or writing word strategy to the objective. Can y'all hear? Should I be closing my window? Can you hear a mower out there?
I don't think it's coming through at all. I'm looking at your audio levels and nothing's moving. Right. And awesome. Even if it did, the nice thing about, and I can edit this out, the nice thing about Riverside is usually noise cancellation takes care of that. So
I figured it does. but just figured I'd ask. You'd hate to get through another hour
dude.
and be like,
shows up with
what
the incredible camera lens with the audio working, and then even like pauses to say, "Hey, is the lawnmower?" What a dream fucking guest from an editing standpoint. Okay, but getting back to it, Andrew, I'm just curious, man.
Don't edit that out, by the way.
Right,
keep it in.
It's all in. Andrew, I think of you as having like a great eye for design and caring about the way that things look. And you and I've never talked about branding or your own experience with your restaurants or with any clients or anything about that element of the business. I'm just curious, like your history or if any thoughts you have on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at it through the lens of very similar to what you said, is like, how do I convey what's inside of my head to be then turned into something that I'm imagining? And, I've never really thought about it in the way that you guys talked about it until just now. And then I started realizing that, well, I've done that. I just haven't done it with branding and design. I've done it with food. And what I mean by that is, like, when I would write menus for the restaurants, right? The owner, the culinary team, we'd go on trips, or if we weren't able to go on the trip, the owner would come back and be like, "Hey man, I just went to San Sebastian. I had this incredible meal. It's this like grilled prawn with blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, okay, cool. How do I recreate this experience for you in Nashville? And what I learned that I had to do was, I can't. I know that out of the gate. There's nothing that I can do that's going to bring San Sebastian to Nashville, Tennessee. So that what I have to do is just be in the same vein and make sure that the emotional attachment to that dish is reminiscent of, right? So as long as we're playing the same instruments, I think we can get there. But I'm not Mozart, and I know that. So I think me being able to have that conversation with the owner, with the team that we're looking at, even when I was doing private chef work, it's like, you talk to this lady and she's like, "Oh, at our reception in Napa, we had this beautiful cab with this amazing filet and this one sauce. I don't know what it was, but it was delicious." And it's like, delicious sauce and beef. Okay, cool. We'll run from that and we'll see what happens. So yeah, I don't know that I've ever looked at that through the lens of branding, but that's definitely, those feelings, those emotions were definitely something that I had to figure out. And what I found super refreshing for me was an anecdote. And I actually just heard this yesterday morning. So I'm sitting with a very, very well-renowned chef from Boston who's got multiple restaurants, nationally recognized, putting my beef in front of him like, "Hey man, this is what we're doing." And we're talking about, like, do these things fit? Does what I'm trying to do fit with what you're producing? And I told him, I was like, "Listen, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. But if it does and it works, I'm here to support you in whatever way I can." And he's like, "I'm glad you said that." And he's like, "I'm going to tell you a story." And the story, essentially, I'll boil it down super quick, which is, he had guests coming into his restaurant that didn't fit the ethos of what they were doing. It was a group of guys, super loud, very much looking to have a good time. This is a fine dining restaurant. People have paid a lot of money to be there. People have spent months waiting to get their seats. And instead of allowing them to come in and know that they're not going to have a good time because the energy of the restaurant is not going to match the energy of the group, he did what he calls firing his guests. He's like, "I fired him." He's like, "I walked up to them. I took care of their drinks. I made them a reservation at a steakhouse right down the street, called the chef, got them in. They got a table. But I walked out and I said, 'Guys, listen, this is not going to be something that you're going to enjoy. What we're doing, our energies don't match at this time, but I'm going to take care of the drinks that you've had since you've been here. And I'm going to move you to a restaurant that I know you're going to enjoy yourself, because where I'm at right now, it doesn't match. I can't provide you with what you need.'" And that fucking blew my mind, because in the restaurant industry, it's all about money. It's all about margin. It's all about table turns. You're turning down 4 dudes that are clearly going to drink and eat because you care more about their experience than you do about your bottom line. And that, to me, is kind of what just everything that I do in this industry boils down to, that, that sentiment, that feeling. And when you were talking about giving confidence to the person you're talking to, that's really where my head was going. I was like, fuck, this story just lines up so well with that. So I love that that's the relationship that you guys have with your clients. I think that's incredible.
I'm just now thinking what the parallels might be, Bill, of the two of you and Andrew both being, like, in a lot of ways captains of a ship, or in the sense of, what am I trying to say? I know Andrew was in the kitchen at certain points, running the kitchen, because at one point I visited him in Nashville and I actually got to go back in the kitchen. He made me this like cashew pepe, but like blended with another type of genre. I can't remember. It was just, you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was the miso ramen cacio e pepe. So we did it with fresh ramen noodles instead. Yeah, with miso.
And it was the coolest one to just be in the back of a nice restaurant and having the chef like making you a meal in the kitchen and eating in there. It's just like one of my favorite moments, but it was also so freaking good. But my larger point here is that you were running a kitchen, right? And now you're in this position where you are representing a company and having to do a lot of the EQ things, but still the actual product that you're comfortable with is right in front of you. And that does actually seem really similar to Bill, who is heading the ship, doing the designs for a huge chunk of this. And now that product is still there in front of you and you're still finding ways to like represent it and do it, but you're in a different place now too. And it brings up a lot of curiosities of what that transition has been like for both of you. And I can imagine it could go in all different types of ways or none at all, in the sense of having this feeling, Bill, of like, sometimes I do wish I was still XYZ, or God, I'm so glad I'm not, because I get to do this other stuff. And same for you, Andrew, as far as, being the person there to like put that beef in front of these people is very different than running that kitchen, I'd assume. But I imagine the parallels, there must be some between you guys.
Yeah, I guess I'll just jump in to say that like I don't ever have feelings or miss like, oh, I wish I was designing again, because that's where I got like where I felt my value and worth was, or that's where the biggest rewards were. I don't feel any of that. I don't know why that is, honestly, because I get asked that question a decent amount, which is like, oh, you've transitioned out of design and now you're just in like business owner mode. Do you miss it? Do you miss it? Do you miss it? I get that all the time from designers, really, that are kind of like climbing their own ladder. I'm like, no, I don't miss it at all. I think that's just because I'm maybe easily fulfilled in a variety of ways. And ultimately, at the highest level, I don't really care. As long as our clients are happy, I don't give a shit what we're doing. I just want us to be great people providing value in our lane. And however I can serve that and get that kind of high, that feeling, I don't care what I'm doing to support that effort. So a lot of that now is like supporting my team and giving them the stage to be front facing with the clients to get that feeling themselves. Now, let's be real. They also get the front facing feeling of the challenge and the obstacles and all those things, but that's part of growing and that's part of the business model we're in. So yeah, I just generally don't look back and miss things much. I'm always kind of like, where can I add value? I'm pretty easygoing. I just like people. How can I kind of just capture that? So I do that through the speaking with clients after, hearing how happy they are and reliving their experience. Nothing makes me more filled up. Joining a really challenging call. I had 2 weeks ago, a really challenging call that I entered with a client that I knew was unhappy, and to leave that call and they are now feeling safe, comforted and happy again. Huge win. I love that. That's where I thrive. So I guess actually now thinking through this live, that's the high that I'm chasing. Whether I'm doing that through pixels, through words, relationally, it doesn't matter to me. I'm always chasing the, do you feel good, client? How you feeling right now? Can I help course correct you so you can see a different perspective to get you back on your way? What can I do to help you? Help. Are either of you familiar with Enneagram profiles? Do you know Enneagram?
Yeah, I actually did one last week because you had mentioned it to me, and then like 2 other people close to me had mentioned it to me recently, and I was finally like, okay, fine, I will go ahead and do it. So yes, I very recently done my Enneagram, believe it or not. What about you, Andrew?
Can I guess what yours is, Charlie, before you say it? And then Andrew, I want to know, do you know yours as well?
I don't remember it, but I've done it twice, and I'll tell that story after you're done. But yeah.
Okay. Charlie, I'm guessing. Now, I'm not an Enneagram wizard, so I should not have stuck myself out this far on the branch. I'm guessing you are an Enneagram 2, Wing 3. Are you a 2, W3?
I am. You got the 3. I am a 3. And I don't remember. I'm trying to load and see what the other one was, because maybe it was 2, but 3 is what I remember being the number one.
It has to be 2.
You know what? I'm not even going to look it up. So
I'll go on my rant.
I'm a 3 wing 2.
Yeah, it has to be. So 2 is a people person. That doesn't mean just a people pleaser, But an Enneagram 2 is somebody that cares about people and puts people in front of themselves. That has to be you, Charlie. It literally has to be you. You're a wing 3, which is the competitive side. You've already kind of hit on that note, which is the any entrepreneurship endeavor you get into, you're very hard on yourself, high drive, very competitive. I'm a 2-3. I'm just the opposite direction. I actually wonder sometimes if I'm a 3-2, it can kind of switch, right? These things are not like static. So all that to say, coming back to my point I just made earlier, which is like how I get my fulfillment is about helping people. I don't give a shit whether I do it through pixels. I don't give a shit if I do it through a podcast that they hear a year later and say, that was really helpful to me. Thanks, man. And they email me. That's where I get my fulfillment. So, I think there was a question that led that rant, but
because it's the idea that meeting different people and seeing that they've gone through different transitions that are similar is interesting to me, because I think transitions are significant opportunities to learn about yourself if you're able or willing to kind of do that introspective work, which is really even where you kind of found yourself saying like, okay, as I think about it, these are the things that bring value to me. And Andrew, I think of that a lot, even though he and I haven't talked about it. Really, it's something that's really passionate to me. And I haven't thought to think, Andrew has actually gone through some significant transitions from being like a line cook to running kitchens to now working at this cattle farm. And the question of like the idea, it's rare to have 3 creatives, 3 entrepreneurs all together thinking about they've also done this transitional stage, and what comes up for you when you reflect on that transition. What did you learn about yourself? So I think you quite effectively answered what I was going for. But I'd love to hear from you, Andrew, too, because I imagine some of that stuff has to resonate that Bill said.
No, 100%. I mean, I think that's when you're talking about how everything kind of comes down to what we called in the hospitality industry the recovery piece, right? Like if you can see that there's a guest at a table that's having an experience that's less than desirable, one of my favorite things was, how do I course correct that experience? How do I recover that experience before they leave the restaurant? Right. So there's 2 benefits there. One, we're showing that we're engaging, that we're paying attention, that the little things that add up to the overall experience matter. And 2, from like the shallow business end of it, it protects us from a Yelp review, an open table review, or whatever nonsense happens on the backside of that experience. But yeah, it all comes down to having that conversation and having the ability to be open to not being right, to be open to pivoting. And I think that's where this industry has served me really well, is because now that I'm in, agriculture, our projections are 4 years out. If we make a decision to grow today, we don't see any single benefit for a minimum of 38 months. So like really trying to understand that in my head, where it's like I make a decision in the restaurant, 5 minutes later it's on a plate, 30 minutes later it's in the trash, and then that plate is ran through a dish machine and I'm doing it all again. So it's like the closed loop is like infinite inside of a restaurant, as in it's always happening, right? If I have one table that goes down, I've got another table next to it that I can do it again. Where now, if one thing goes wrong, I have a 3.5-year window to figure out why it went wrong, what happened, and what I can do to prevent that from happening again. And it's a complete mind fuck. And it's taken me, this is my 5th year in this business, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It's great, and I love it, and I love not knowing. It's the most fun I've ever had.
Can I jump in and say kudos to Andrew? He trumped my, so people will remember 10 or 15 minutes ago when I was like, and we have to do that every single week. We have to put ourselves on the line every single week, and we ship. And Andrew came over the top of that. I was like, we do that every 30 minutes, brother. Like every 30 minutes, we got to put another meal out and we get judged on it. We got to put another meal out and we get judged on it. And we have to do that forever. That's a hell of a hamster wheel. And you're right, man. I can't imagine the Yelp conundrum, right? You do that for 10 years straight consistently, and you get one, for whatever reason, unhappy customer. They slam you on Yelp, and all of a sudden, like dragging your average down, and people see that and they go, "Oh, I'm not going to eat there." Not great. I feel for you.
I mean, the crazy part about it for me, I think the part that really, when I found value in it in the beginning, I was like, well, they just don't understand. They don't understand. They don't understand the food we're trying to do. They don't understand the flavors we're trying to convey. They don't understand what we're trying to put together and curate for them. And then I realized, like, that's not the way to look at it. Like, who fucking cares what I want to do? They're here for their anniversary. They're here for their birthday. They're so like the restaurants that I was running were, I mean, they're not Michelin starred restaurants, but people came to those restaurants for celebration. This wasn't your like casual restaurant that you pop into and drop $40. Like our PPA at one of our restaurants was $150 a person. The other one that I was running was in the high 80s. The other one was in the high 90s. So like you're spending a decent amount of money. And this is 2015, 2014 up until 2019. So like my thought process had to really change. It's like, I don't need these guests to be here in service of my ego. I need to shut my ego off and go out there and be in service of those guests and say, what can I do? How can I make this experience tailored for what you want out of it? And until we got to that point, it was super combative. I mean, you send a manager to the table, the manager is trying to argue on behalf of the kitchen. No, they did this right. They did this right. And it's like, we got to get past that. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. That's not the point of this. The point is they came here for an experience and it's our job to give that to them. And it took a long time to get there. I mean, I remember in my young days, I was like, fuck them, tell them to go somewhere else. I'm not changing how I cook. Oh, they have a allergy intolerance? Too fucking bad. Go somewhere else. I'm not doing that. And then I realized like that's my job. That's what I get paid to do. So it's it takes a lot of maturing and a lot of self-reflection to get there. And it's
okay, couple
it's wild.
Things. This is incredible. Clip the fuck out of this. PPA, price per
person average.
Per person average.
Per person. Okay. I was trying to do the math in my head too. I'm like, what?
I like to give the lingo to people, you know.
Yeah.
Now they know some of the insider lingo. Okay, so I got two things. One of them's gonna feel weird, but just bear with me. One of them though is this. Obviously, there's balance to things, right? Especially if you're trying to like do some really cool shit. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on this because I think it relates to both of your fields. So the question of balance here, what I mean is, this company has come to me, you know, one of these tech companies, whatever it is, Bill, and they think they've got the, you know, significant fundraising. They want a brand to match their ambitions. And you feel like part of your calling and part of what your team can do is you can create something novel, something that fits, something that's really on par with any of the best branding agencies, you know, and I believe that because you guys do killer work. So you know this, right? There's this call as an artist and as a strategist to create a significant experience, right? And same thing, Andrew, people are coming to that restaurant, the customer, this idea of like, which you didn't say the customer's always right, but this idea that like we need to prioritize their experience does come, I think, at this counter push too, up until a point where you can't sacrifice the quality of something that you're doing. So there's certain extremes where you'd have to think about like, what is that you guys are doing? And so that is the interesting thing to me, right? Is figuring out that balance so that you don't become a branding agency that feels like it's always shipping lesser work, but hey, at least the CEO is happy, because you also want your portfolio to represent, you know, the top tier of what you know is capable of doing, or you can see beyond what the CEO can see now, but you almost know or can imagine that they're going to see what everybody else ends up seeing if you can find a way for them to accept that you've produced some really great work. Just like you want to be like, hey, Charlie, I know you don't want to eat this, you know, duck liver. I know that you're not interested in it, but like, I'm telling you, Charlie, you should try it. And now my experience is way better because I trusted you. But of course, you can't come out and force somebody to eat something that doesn't want to eat it on their anniversary. So there lies in that tension, right? Of full just acceptance and like letting go sometimes versus challenging and wanting to push. And I feel like that must happen in both of your industries. So to whichever would you guys would want to say something to that first, I'd love to listen.
Andrew, I think I have it easier than you, and I'll tell you why.
Well, I think the exact opposite. So I love this.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's great. So that tension, like when you say that word tension, I think that's spot on, Charlie. There is natural tension there. Some people are okay with inside of tension. Some people are not. When I say people, I'm talking about clients. Some clients can navigate that tension and live within it for a while, and some really struggle and they want to get back out of the tension zone. I almost think about it as like a chart of like happy, pissed, and then the majority is like tension. And you might be hovering closer to the happy side or the pissed side, and then you eventually just fall into one or the other. Why I think I might have it easier in my business model is I don't have to solve that tension immediately. my clients can live within that tension for weeks. I don't have somebody sitting at a table saying like, I'm not fucking sleeping here. I'm not going to be here tomorrow and I might not come back. You need to resolve this tension now. For us, we can ride the tension a little bit. I have time and opportunity to say, let's do a one-on-one next week, actually. And let me try to tell you why I think you should go this direction, even though it makes you feel uncomfortable. Let's have another meeting where we can talk about why I think that decision you're making is not great. And eventually we can also decide how much tension we want, right? I can't force somebody to accept something that I know is right for them. I still have to accept, kind of like Andrew was saying, like they came for a thing and ultimately I need to do my best to give them the thing they want while guiding them. But I can't stick the food in their mouth. I can't do that. I suspect, and I'm very interested to hear from Andrew now, that like that tension window is much smaller, right? The resolution has to happen a little bit faster. But I do think that it seems like we're very similar in our mindset, which is like, it is our job to resolve the tension. It is absolutely our job. I have also matured past the point of, well, that's just their problem. They don't fucking get it. They don't understand design or writing or strategy, and they don't understand brand. So like they're dumb. No, it's like, no. Our job is the guide. And not only is it the guide, like fucking 80% of our job is the guide. The pixels and the words and stuff are actually like fairly easy if you really boil it down. But it's helping them understand what it is, why it matters, trying to get their vision with our vision, all this stuff that we keep talking about, EQ. That's the lift. But I think I have more time in that journey than maybe you do, Andrew. Interested to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, the time piece honestly is what scares the shit out of me more than anything. I'm a classically classically undiagnosed overthinker. I'm a defensive pessimist in that world. Like I'll wake up at 2 a.m. and go, holy fuck, if I don't get this thing done, that's not due for another 3 weeks, it's going to end like I can't get it out of my head. So then I'll wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, get on my computer and just hammer shit out, even though the deadline's not for 3 weeks. Like, cause my brain just triggers that shit. We're in a restaurant. I've got an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, depending on the party size, to figure this whole thing out, orchestrate this whole thing and dial it in. But that's not that part didn't even come into my mind until you were talking about that tension timeline. And that just gave me anxiety, just hearing to sit with that for weeks going, I know they don't like it. Maybe I'm not communicating right. Maybe they're not communicating right, but we're going to figure this out over 3 weeks. That terrifies the shit out of me. But the look that I came to it was like, my job is to bring them into the fold for what I do. It's to convince them that what I'm preparing, what I'm putting out into this world is desirable, and then answer any questions about what it may be that they don't understand about it. Where I think for you is you're attaching something to them and their person. If they're starting a business and they're building a brand that's going to be get forward facing for however long that brand exists, what you're doing is you're creating an extension of that person, of that business, of that company that lives with them day in and day out, regardless of where they're at in life. For me, I put a piece of food on a plate and hope they like it. So, and I get I'm oversimplifying what I do and what you do, but that's the world that I live. It's like my job is to educate, bring somebody into the fold and say, hey, this is the experience that we have curated for you. You've opted into it. If you have any questions about it, great. Whereas I'm not trying to pull something out of their brain that's going to represent them in any fashion. So that part of it gives me so much anxiety, which is why I got out of doing private chef work.
It also seems like the stakes are different, so that's at least one of the reprieves that you can get in the restaurant business. Is you could have a really successful night. Yeah, no pun intended. You could have a really successful night where 95% of people like accepted the experience. They embraced what Andrew and what the restaurant's vision was. They went home thinking, wow, that was the place to celebrate. And that outlier is going to be painful for all of us entrepreneurs. It's going to stick with us. It's going to be tough to deal with. But if 90 to 95% of my dinner experience was people accepting what I was creating and enjoying it, that's like wildly successful. And then, okay, maybe you have more time, 2 or 3 weeks or whatever for this person, but there's a lot more people involved, potentially a lot more revenue at stake, and then a bigger thumbprint potentially on your portfolio, depending on who the client is. This is my way to balance the scales a little bit. I obviously I'm not saying one is harder than the other, but I'm thinking about that element to it.
I think I've realized ours is harder. Yes, because there were things I were not thinking about. You're absolutely correct. There's more parties involved, and not only just the longevity of the tension that you have to deal with, the long tail that you're right. Like, not only do they need to eat the steak that night and like it, and you need to convince them that experience and everything is something they like, they need to keep that same feeling for us sometimes 10 years or something, right? Now, the longer it goes out, the less judgment comes back to us, because we all know that things evolve and things are going to have to change, and can't expect the steak you cooked on night 1 to be great year 7, right? So like, we have the benefit of that kind of like trail off. But yeah, you're right. I guess maybe the stakes are higher, even if simply just like the parties involved. And I loved your point, Andrew, on just the like, yeah, I have to deal with it immediately, but at least I deal with it and it's over. I can attest to the fact that like, there are sleepless nights on our team where there's a big meeting next week and you're ruminating, right? And I do my best to try to tell them, don't ruminate. Don't do that. We don't know exactly how that meeting is going to go. And I actually say this a lot within our company. I don't have to say it a lot anymore, but like, if we're going to assume the worst, this is just a good life lesson. If you're going to assume the downside worst, you have to assume the upside best. You have to be fair to yourself. You don't know. You can presume it's higher chance we're going to go downside to the risk side. If I were placing bets in Vegas, I'm betting on the downside. But mentally, I need to at least give myself the grace to say, can I also go to the upside with this? And what I found, I actually said this to my team last week. I came out of that meeting the week before, which I knew was going to be a really challenging meeting. And it was a giant success. CMO, totally, okay, I hear you. Yes, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing the vision now. I'm starting to get excited. Yes. You can feel the energy. I come out of that meeting more jacked up than I come out of those debrief episodes I'm talking about. And I went back to my team the next week and I told them this, like, if you assume the worst, assume the best. Give yourself a moment in time. But also what I told them, what I realized personally was, I actually think that's maybe the best part of my job. It is the part of my job that in reality, on the surface, would look like the worst part of my job. It's actually the most fulfilling. And what I also realized in that realization is 9 times out of 10, all of those really challenging meetings that I go into end up on the upside. Like literally 9 out of 10. It's very rare you go into those and they go further down. So to me, that means I should go into those meetings with a different mindset, knowing that the vast majority I should bet to the upside. And not only should I go into them with a different mindset, I should welcome them. My team should welcome them. We should understand the realities, right? It's the same point. And now we're going on tangents, but let's go there. It's the same reality of like, the hard shit sticks with you longer than the good shit, right? You could have 10 great wins, but you got 1 bad loss and oh my God, everything's falling apart. Those meetings are a good example of that too. So yeah, clients, clients are going to client. Don't be in businesses where you have clients if you're not right, if you're not up for that challenge. And if you can't find a mindset like we're talking about, Andrew, I can only presume that for you, your biggest wins come out when you come out and talk to a client. Oh, I understand now. Oh my God, you've really turned this around. And they leave elated the restaurant. You're like, holy shit, that's a better trophy. I don't want the trophy where someone comes in and is just like, it was great, man. Cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah. You want the trophy where they're kind of like, I don't get it. I'm confused. And they turn into super fans.
Yeah. And it's funny you frame it that way, because that exact experience is now way more prevalent than what I do today than what I was doing when I was a chef. Because I have the background of being a chef, but now my whole goal is to expand our business and then to take our product, present it to a chef, and get them to understand the why behind what we do and to find the value within our product. So the weird thing about beef and just in general, just the food system, is it's very, very relationship based. right? Because food is so subjective as to what's good and what's not good, as I'm sure with branding, right? People have different aesthetics. They have different ideas of what they like versus what you like, and you've got to blend those things. But when there's that emotional bridge that you have to cross, you have to learn how to tread very lightly, and you have to know when and where to kind of poke the bear. And that's my favorite fucking part about this job that I have, is that I love I love combative chefs when I go and talk to them. A quick story is I was in Jacksonville, Florida at this restaurant. I'm not going to name the restaurant, but I walk in and the chef's like, "I don't know why you're here." And I was like, "I guess now I don't know why I'm here either." And he goes, "We buy the best burger in the world. There's no way your burger's any better. It's a waste of your time to be here." And I said, "Okay, cool. Well, if we're wasting my time, can I at least cook you a burger?" And he was like, "Absolutely, but I'm going to have my sous chef cook the burger, and they're going to cook our burger, and they're going to cook your burger, and we're going to see what happens." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Nobody knows. Everybody's happy." So it's double blind. He doesn't know who cooked what. The sous chef puts it on separate plates. We eat it. He takes a bite of the burger, and he goes, "See, man, I told you, there's no way your burger's better than this." And the sous chef goes, "Hey, man, that's his burger." And the chef looks at me and goes, "What?" And then he goes back there, cooks another one himself, and comes back out and eats it and goes, "All right, cool, man. You got my burger business. Here's 20 cases. Send it tomorrow." And it's like, when I was with the rep was like tapping me like, "Okay, dude, he's not interested. Let's go." And I'm like, "No, dude, fuck that. Like, we're going to have the conversation. If he thinks what he has is better, I want him to prove it to me, because what I think I have is the best." And that to me is my favorite win that I've ever had on this side of the industry, because I walked in and it was a 0% chance walking in the door. If we would have turned around and listened to him, where would we be now? We wouldn't have that feather in our cap. We wouldn't have that restaurant selling our product. So I totally agree. The difficult conversations are by far my favorite trophies to put on the wall. 100%.
Goddamn. Okay, so follow-up question for both of you guys, and I'll answer it myself, which is, we kind of stumbled upon something that I really like. I've been a high anxiety but high achieving person for most of my life. And I always love when I meet other people that have developed or uncovered strategies for that anxiety. And I would kind of say that's part of what you gave your team, right? Which is, yeah, if your mind's naturally going to assume the worst, it's a gift to yourself to also imagine the best as well, right? And so I'm interested in if you have any others, Bill, and then Andrew, of course, if you have some that come to mind about anxiety. But for me, one of the best things a friend told me was like, "Hey, man, it's not like you can pay down the anxiety ahead of time. It's not like paying down interest or paying down a loan. It's not like if the thing's in 2 weeks and you keep thinking about it, you don't get to lower it. So what are you doing to yourself? You're doing the opposite. You're actually just building up the anxiety in an attempt to what you naturally are thinking you're doing is you think you're finding all these ways to lower it, but you're not at all, right? It's the same idea of like, one of my favorite things from Atomic Habits is this idea of, if you're struggling to go to the gym, which I've always struggled to go to the gym, is like, just make it about one thing that, if you do that one thing, then you're already on your way to the gym. And he's like, putting on your shoes. And like, that's what it'll be for me, is like, if I just go grab my shoes out of my closet and I could see myself putting on my shoes, now I already know that the rest of it's just in motion. I am just going to go do it, versus the inclination that I have as an anxious person to just be having this conversation in my mind all day about whether or not I'm going to go and should go, and I should, but I'm not going to, am I? Or I don't know, which is just so unnecessary and so much worse. So anyway, I wanted to share mine because I really liked yours, Bill, and I don't know if you have another one that you'd like to share. And then Andrew, of course, you as well, when it comes to anxiety.
I was going to let Andrew go first because I stole the mic first last time. That's my Enneagram 2 coming out. People person.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this, I think, previously on one of the other podcasts, but my biggest upside is also my biggest downside, which is I prioritize the present moment more than anything else. And I'm always about, how do I make today better? And I don't tend to look towards next week, the month after that, whatever. I think that came up when we were talking about finances in a previous conversation. But somebody told me a long time ago about anxiety, is that anxiety robs you of the present. And it's true, because I can't control what's going to happen in 2 weeks. So why the fuck should I worry about it today? I want to enjoy what it is that I'm doing today. And my brain takes things in either absolute zeros or at 100%. So I can't manage it. There's no gray area with stuff like that. So for me, it's at 100% in that world, and it's to a fault. And that's one of the things that I've tried to figure out and kind of manage. But the positive sides of it, to look at what you said, if there's a bad side, there's got to be a good side. which is like for these podcasts, like I was so anxious about fucking preparation and like, what questions am I going to ask? How am I going to navigate the conversation? To where I did all this prep for our first one. And I realized, like, going back and watching the edits that Charlie's done and everything that we're doing, like, I can hear myself and feel myself like trying to get to something and like, how do I sort of weave all of this together? And then I just said, okay, I'm just not going to do it and see what happens. And then that very next conversation was like, it just was so organic and so natural that it felt so right to be just present in the moment and let the moment carry the conversation, that I was like, I'm never doing this again. And now that I've applied that to everything. So like all the meetings that we've had at work over the last month, I'm like, I'm not preparing shit. We're just going to walk in and get it done. So it's like I said, it's a 0 or 100 thing, but that's kind of where my head goes.
Oh my God, I love that. And it's really going to tie in well to one of the things I was going to say. So I would just share, gratefully, I don't generally run all that anxious. And I really am grateful for that, because that would be quite the beast to deal with. Everything is gray to me. Nothing is black and white. My entire life lives in gray. I'm very casual and kind of like, I don't know, I would almost say like maybe lazy on a certain level, to the like, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. That drives my wife nuts. It drives my fucking team nuts, right? Like, yeah, it'll be all right. We'll figure it out. But what I would say is, when I am anxious, for me, that would be, God, the business struggled last year. We did 2 rounds of layoffs. I don't even know if Charlie knows that. Really struggled last year. We're 35 people. We're down to 23-ish now. Those are the times where I'm really getting eaten up. If I'm losing sleep, it's those types of environments. They have to be pretty extreme, because the other shit I'm able to just kind of like, it's all right. When those moments show up, physical activity is my first magic pill. Last year, if you followed me, Charlie, on Strava, I was running like a motherfucker. I was literally like, God, like last October, which is right in the heat, September, October, the heat of our layoffs, I was running like 7 miles a day. Every single day, hustling. I get my anxiety out through just pure exhaustion. So my brain can't even turn anymore. It literally can't turn. There's nothing left. I'm so exhausted. That's my number one cure for if anytime I'm anxious. Interestingly, my second, hopefully newfound cure for anxiety when I have it is going to be around, I'm getting to the mode of my life and my business where it's going to be more helpful for me to be on stages a lot, and to do more public speaking and talking about what we do and why it matters. And using, hopefully, what's coming across here is my natural charisma, dare I say it, and just personality to like share what we do in a kind of open, vulnerable way. But I hate being on stage. You want to talk about anxious? Man, my heart's pounding out my freaking chest if I got to walk in front of a room, 200 people on a stage, and it's dark and the light's just on me. In this setting, I'm a free bird. I couldn't be more relaxed. My pulse is probably 48. On that stage, it'll be ticking. It'll be redlining. What I've been learning a lot and listening to is preparation. Funny enough, I'm not a preparation guy. My leadership team has been beating me up as CEO to be more prepared. I actually love to run freestyle. I prefer it. But what I'm realizing is, in those moments of my highest anxiety, the things that scare me the most, if I'm over prepared, I will have knocked a lot of that out. Because I will be over prepared. I will know the talk so well that I won't worry about what if I mess it up, and what if I'm going to say this thing? What if I sound stupid? It will just become so natural, be like muscle memory. So that's kind of where I'm at on the anxiety note. I don't know that that's all that helpful, but really, it's physical activity for me.
I think it's extremely helpful.
Body to the ground. I think literally run it to the ground.
I think it's extremely helpful. I think I even remember messaging you on Twitter or Instagram or something last year, because you had like posted some insane screenshot of a run or something, and I just be like, oh my God. But I know that that's a thing. I mean, I think obviously that's been told forever, but I know there was a study not too long ago about this idea that your body's gonna find a way to burn calories a certain amount no matter what. And there's theories that predict, like, if it's not happening because you're out there running, it's happening even in your office chair at work. And that part of the
it's like trying to work itself out
through mental like exertion and stress, right? So it's like sometimes I'll think about that. I'm like, all right, if it's going to happen either way and it's like set in motion because I'm not being active enough for it to happen in my brain, then like fuck that. Like I would rather exchange it for the other thing for sure. So I actually think that's really great. I think that's really great advice from both of you guys.
There's one other thing I actually just remembered that I was going to say, and this might be stupid. This is the dumber of the notes, but I'm able to do it. And there's one other person on the team that's able to do it. I'm also able to quickly say, in the grand scheme of like the galaxy, how much does this matter? I'm really able to separate my brain and say, all right, I got a really challenging meeting coming up and the client's really frustrated because it's not the logo they want, blah, blah, blah. I'm like floating around on a space rock. Like I'm a micro speck of dust in a timeline that is millions of years long. And like, am I going to continue to choose to lose sleep over this, or just recognize if I try to zoom out, you know, those graphics where you zoom and all of a sudden you're like above the earth, and then you zoom and then you zoom and all of a sudden all you see is like just the galaxy. It sounds really silly. That works for me straight up. It literally works for me. I can separate myself from the severity of what I'm feeling to the making it feel like so ridiculous that I'm like, yeah, all right, cool.
Bill, my guy, there is not one thing that is dumb or even silly about that. That is the masterful technique. It's one that I hope to spend all the years, the rest of my life mastering, which is if I want to find deep, deep meaning because I am feeling a little listless and a little nihilistic and a little cynical, my job is to zoom in and realize that right now, this conversation, the three of us happening, is the most important thing in the world because it's happening right now. And if I am feeling like I am too anxious and too stressed and a little too looking at navel gazing, worrying about all my problems and everything about me, my best technique is to zoom the fuck out and realize that, like you said, we're on a rock floating through space. And that a lot of the beauty in life, and this is from a Twitter account that Kat and I follow called Visa something, but he's extremely popular on Twitter. And he had this graphic, this meme that he made, and I'm going to butcher it, but it doesn't matter. The idea is this: when you're zooming in between those, you're kind of like taking a ship in between these two extremes, right? Of like nothing matters, right? Zooming all the way out, and everything matters in an excruciating, painful, important way. And he's got this like ship going between the middle, being like, "Hey, LMAO" is like the meme, like, you know. And I've never seen such a silly meme have such profound impact on like thousands and thousands of people on the internet, and even me sitting there and being like, "Yeah, where am I right now? Am I zoomed all the way in for better or worse? Am I zoomed all the way out for better or worse? Am I like striking some type of dance in between the middle?" So I just want to like further validate and just say that is extremely great advice. There's nothing silly or dumb about it. Actually, one of the best moments of my like adolescence was a Bright Eyes song on an album. It was like a 17-year-old or something, and it was like, "I'm happy just because I finally realized I'm no one," right? Which sounds like dark, but it was this beautiful idea. And I was going from a high school with 38 people in my graduating class, where there was a pre-K there. So like kindergartners or middle schoolers knew who you were when you were a senior, and everybody knew everybody. And then I went to UCF, where there was like 60,000 students, and I was like listening to that song. And I just remember being like, wow, I have never felt more free. So I just think it's really good advice, I guess I would say. But I did want to come back to something, and it's going to feel a little like the conversation with your son about talking to girls, where you can be like, okay, he said this is going somewhere, but I'm not really sure where. So bear with me. I love going on Am I the Asshole? It's a subreddit where people will just like have some type of micro drama or big drama in their life, and they need clarity and help. So they go to the internet to be like asking them, almost as like an ethicist, right? To be like, am I the asshole? Did I do the wrong thing here? And it's become such a thing now that when Kat and I are going to bed, sometimes like she'll ask for it, like, "Hey, let's like tell me a story." And I'll be like, I like flirted with the idea like a month and a half ago, like, what if I told you like a story of one of these people's like microdramas, and then before we fall asleep, we can both decide together what we think. Is the person an asshole? Are they not an asshole? And then what did the internet, how did they judge, right? So we're like, we'll stop ourselves from seeing what, you know, thousands of people agreed was the thing. Okay, so you're still with me. I would say about 10% of them, it feels like, maybe even 20%, a lot of them that become really popular are parents about to have a kid disagreeing on the name of their kid, and it's getting like ugly and getting bad, and it's surprising to see how frequent this is. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because you come to mind, Bill, with what I've seen you do and all the times I've worked with you, is there's always some incredible person in the comments that finds a way to actually attempt to deliver wisdom in a way that it'll be heard versus just dunking on whoever they think is being unreasonable. And you're like, somebody out there is like actually pure and like wise and trying to help out this couple when everybody else is like getting free internet points for coming up with like the funniest, most hilarious thing to say to these like dumbass parents that can't just agree on a name. Like, just grow up and pick out a name for your kid. It's not about
you. Just did it, Charlie. You just did it. You dunked on him.
Yeah. Well, because, you know, it's the kid's name should be, it's about the kid. And I swear to God, all the ones I see on there are about the parents. So why do I bring this up to you is because I think that sometimes I'm like, I wonder if like Bill is on the subreddit right now writing these, because if you think about it, these are people's like kids and they're putting so much of their own identity into the branding of something.
Oh, interesting.
You know? And they're like, I'm sure that over your career, you've seen disagreements, not necessarily just between what your studio's offered in them, but within the people that you've handed it over to. And so it was one of those things I just wanted to ask. And I know it's a kind of a roundabout way, but it's a funny way. I thought you would enjoy the fact that like when I read some of those, I think about you coming to the table and being like, listen, guys, we all want the same thing. We want this company to be strong and healthy. And we want it to be to love what it is.
You know what else I would say? It doesn't fucking matter what you pick. At the end of the day, it literally doesn't matter. So the name to me, this is great. I love the can of worms you just opened up in my brain, coming back to Charlie's superpowers. To me, on the spot in this moment, on my second beer, you're getting the clearest version of me that there is. It's like a client picking a logo. The logo doesn't mean shit. It literally doesn't mean shit. And I say that as a company that makes logos every day for lots of money. Because how you act, what you say, how you're positioned, everything else in that child's life defines what that name means. It could be Bill, Charlie, Andrew, Sarah, Kim. It doesn't. Who gives a shit what the name is? People attach so much meaning to a thing, a name. It has no meaning. There are probably Bills you know that are assholes. And then hopefully there's a Bill you know that's not quite an asshole, but he's interesting, if anything. There are logos. Nike could have the same logo they have. Their product could suck. They could stand for awful things, and we could all hate them. They could be the Comcast of the shoe business. It wouldn't matter what their logo is. But because they're loved, we look at that logo and we say it's everything. Apple, we look at that logo and we say it's everything. No, it's not. It's just a symbol. It just identifies all the other feelings you have about the thing. A name is no different. I think about Charlie Todd, so we need both names in there. I think about Charlie Todd, that I have an immediate association and a heartfelt kind of tie to what that means to me. Your name could have been Rick, Steve. I'm still picking like stupid white, dumb American names. There's a lot of other better names than that. It doesn't matter what the name is. They're lost in semantics. But it is my job. Now let me pad this. It is my job to empathize on our side in our business with that decision and how hard it is. I have to help people in not the same language I've just used to help them realize the same thing. Listen, this is a hard decision. I get it. Let me try to help you realize why this is not so hard. We're making micro changes now, and I'll continue to make them for you. They're not going to move the needle. All the other shit below this is going to move the needle. And I guess I would hopefully be that person in that thread also telling those parents, trying to empathize with them. That is one of my superpowers as an Enneagram 2, being a really good people read and empathizing with how people are feeling is the superpower of that Enneagram profile. That would be my natural instinctual role. Hey, it doesn't matter what you pick. You got 4 great names. Just pick one. Don't even worry about it. You're sweating it. It's going to be great. Raise them well. Instill good morals in them. That's the shit that matters. Who gives a shit about a name? Just pick something cool. Like it would almost be that conversation. You want to look like you're wildly creative? Pick a wild, creative name. You want to be generic? Follow a religious trait kind of name? Do that. Ship it. Be done with it. Move on.
The most powerful thing about that, you said right at the beginning, and I felt it, was what will dictate this is the life beyond the name. What is to come is what will dictate it. That is such a beautiful sentiment in so many ways. I just love that answer so freaking much. We are sponsored by Comcast. Otherwise, everything you said was great.
Yeah. Also note, I won't even get into it. There's other reasons I probably shouldn't have said that, but yeah, it's fine.
We aren't sponsored by Comcast for whatever that's worth, in case somebody's literally taking that. Andrew, man, how great of an answer was that? I'm so glad I brought up this weird thing that made me think of Bill when I was on Reddit.
No, I love it. It's the thread of that is very true, I think, in a lot of things, and it's overlooked. I think people, at least in my experience from restaurants and coming up with how do you name a restaurant? A lot of that same conversation comes up. And one of the things that, I was told a long time ago from a restaurateur was pretty similar to what you said, is the fucking name doesn't mean anything. The name doesn't come with a definition. The name doesn't come with a story. The name doesn't come with anything. It's just a couple of letters put together, and you, as the owner, as the creative, get to define what that means and what impact that'll have. And I love that. And that's something that I've taken with me. It's like, I don't need to find the perfect thing. I just need to fucking create it. I need to be that thing, and that thing will take on its own life, and that thing will move forward. And it's wild. It's such a fun, very kind of I don't know, an effervescent way to go about it, to say something really stupid. But yeah, effervescent. Yeah, I hate that word.
Not stupid. I loved that word. That was a great word choice for what it's worth.
It's just so fun to me to be able to kind of navigate that. And that's what I love about my job. People ask me all the time, they're like, what do you do for a living? I was like, dude, I tell stories. That's it. I go, I try to read somebody, I try to understand what they're looking for, and I try to tell them the story of our farm, of our product, of what we're trying to do that connects with them. And I tell it differently depending on who the chef is. And it's the one thing that sales reps hate about going out on the road with me, is they're like, dude, the story you told at the last spot is totally different than the story you told at this spot. And I was like, well, yeah, it's not the same chef. It's not the same restaurant. Why would I tell them the same story? And it's like, you just see their brains go, oh, I don't have to read a script everywhere I go. And it's like, no, man, live life.
Please
don't,
have fun. Actually.
Yeah, exactly.
But the only thing I would add on the naming side, again, this might be me covering my butt just in my industry. What you wouldn't want to do, though, when I'm saying naming your child makes no difference, I do truly mean that. The name of your child makes no difference. Now, what you wouldn't want to do is name your restaurant Chicken Fried Steak and you don't serve any chicken. So there are guardrails of importance in name selection in business. All that to say, though, it largely doesn't matter. Focus Lab. What the hell does that mean? Doesn't tell anybody what we do. That's actually better. That means we can do anything at any point forever, and it would still fit. So there are kind of general guidelines. But yeah, from a naming a human being perspective, have at it. You want to be fun and creative, or you want to be standard?
Lucifer.
Yeah, there's probably still guardrails. Good point. Yeah,
but they're or less between. This was so great. Anytime we reach the over hour mark, I always just love to check back in and be like, hey, is there something that you did kind of want to talk about, or halfway through you're like, that's curiosity, before we end up fading this thing out. But God, this has been such a good conversation. Is there any other questions or curiosities or territories you just wanted to tap your toe into for either of you guys?
I definitely have a couple questions for Bill if he's cool or open to
do it. Let's roll.
To prodding. So earlier we were talking about confidence, right? Is that
being no pun intended?
Yeah, right.
No pun intended. Prodding. That's twice.
But we talked about confidence earlier, and one of my favorite things that I didn't know until maybe 10 years ago is that the term con man is actually confidence man. That was something that I came to know very late in life. And it's because you're trying that your mark or the person you're trying to take advantage of, you're trying to give them, instill confidence in you so they buy whatever you're trying to swindle them, pull the wool over their eyes. So you knowing what you know about branding, right? There's very specific things that you know that will work, that won't work, that you have to guide that person, your client, out of, direct them towards. Is there ever this like moral, like good versus bad on your shoulder saying, with what I know, I can because at the end of the day, you still have your thumbprint on it, right? Like Focus Lab is still attached to that. And if they tell you, like, I want this, and it's the same conversation I have with my tattoo artist, it's like, this is what I want. I'm paying for it, do it. And they go, actually, that's going to look like shit. Don't do that. Do you have that? Like, can you guide somebody down that road without completely changing what it is that they want and still kind of come together? Or is there like and you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable, but is there like a strategic, like, I'm going to pull the wool over their eyes to a certain degree because I know that what I'm going to do is going to benefit them later down the road?
So I was today years old when I realized and learned that con man was confidence man. Thank you for that. You know, we don't run into that much. So my answer might be loose, but I'll try to like work my way through it. We certainly want to run through a moral code. I hope that's obvious for most companies, but it's probably not. Much of branding, whether it's our brand and how we're selling ourselves to our customers or how our customers are selling themselves to their customers, it's all a game of perception. And that line in perception could turn to actually like lying and manipulating and things that are actually not morally sound. For our customers, though, which are B2B tech, there's only so much lying and manipulating you could do anyways. And even having said that, thinking on the spot, they're generally wanting to be safer and closer to home anyways. So we don't ever really find ourselves in a position personally that we're going beyond our own morals of how we're instilling confidence or telling them what they should do, or even what they're saying they want to do and achieve with their clients. So there's really not a line there. I wish I had a more dramatic answer for you, but I think maybe because of who we are, how my brain is just wired, and the types of clients that we work with, we never find that line. It's never even part of the conversation. It's never even in and around us. Now, if somebody, I guess we were working with them and they're like, I don't know, I'm trying to dream of things. If we worked with a cigarette company and they were trying to basically get us to rebrand them as healthy, right? We'd be like, no, that's a lie. Like, we won't do that for you. But we just don't work in those types of industries that have such black and white conflict of like morality.
What about you, Charlie? Does that ever come across when you're doing like leadership and you're coaching somebody that's not maybe familiar with the space? Like, are you in your head going, okay, I know what it's going to take to get them to where they need to go. Can I have a white lie that's the catalyst to get them to understand what it is that we're trying to put together? Or is there this like very hard line of I can't veer from the path?
No, it's a great question. I love that you found a way to target me with it because I thought I just like was clear. I was like, I don't have to answer a difficult question. This is great. Thanks, Bill. And we'll see you next time. Because you're actually asking a very serious, hard to answer question, really, which is the way that I thought about it is we live in an extremely adversarial time when it comes to coaching and therapists and asking for mentors or anything, because there's a lot of cynicism and also there's a lot of power that you're handing over to somebody else. If they're a therapist, if they're a coach, whatever it is, and people take advantage of power and there's consequences to what we say, right? So I think this is a conversation that's had now more than ever, and for good reason. But sometimes what I'll see and what I try to learn from is people that are like, I only ever want this like Socratic method of I'm asking you how you feel. I'm asking what do you think about that? How does that what you actually want? And so there's that very much. And then there's other people that are like, that's bullshit. You're not really helping anybody. Somebody's coming to you and they're saying, you got experience, you've been an entrepreneur. In my case, like, you've navigated incredibly difficult family business dynamics. Coach me in family business. Tell me the thing, right? Challenge me. I want to know. And then the in between, which you could even have a situation there, right? Of like, well, can I imagine a way where I tell this story and it feels a little like ethically ambiguous, but I believe that the ends justify the means. And I think that people probably do that. To me, it's not just that feels uncomfortable, because it does, but it just doesn't feel as effective for me. So I think I'd be lying if I said I would never do that because it feels morally wrong. Maybe that's part of it. I like to believe that's part of it, but it just doesn't resonate as much to me as like, that does not seem as effective for me. That's not going to resonate in a real honest way, because I'm not capable of selling it that way. And it just makes me feel all kinds of anxious to think I might be able to trick somebody into helping themselves. So I would say, to shorten kind of my answer though to you, Andrew, because it's kind of gotten to methodology, which I'm still trying to form, right? Still trying to like forever work on, curate, figure out what works for me, what doesn't work, what works with the people I'm working with, how do you adjust, is that I want a little bit of a dance between these different tools. That for somebody, it actually might be incredibly powerful for them to have somebody lead them and help them feel safe with them, like where they are, to really ask themselves these questions. Yeah, we know actually, what do you think? Why do you think you want that raise? You know, why are you valuing that? And what would that mean if you got it? You know, and asking, I think there's actually a crazy amount of power in getting somebody to do that. And then sometimes I do think it can really help to be like, all right, I'm hearing everything you're saying, and it sounds like you really want X. Why haven't you tried this? Right. And I think that's where in coaching you can be a little bit more challenging depending on the person it is. So I think one, it's about knowing yourself, which I think is the hardest part of any coach or any therapist or whatever, is like, am I projecting my fears and my shit that's coming up from talking to a client or talking to anybody else? Am I projecting onto them? And so whatever they say, whatever, it's a family business problem, it's an interpersonal thing, it's dating, and all of a sudden, is that just like insta triggering all the things I tell myself to make myself feel better? And now I'm just on autopilot being like this. Or am I able to be like, I know myself. This is not about myself. Can I really, really get better at actively listening to them and then trying to figure out the best method is to try to get them to open up more, or the best method for this person might be to actually say like, hey, I'm going to challenge you on this. Like, tell me your response to my challenge, you know? So anyway, that's probably people probably talk a ton about this. And I'm obviously earlier in that portion of this transition for being an entrepreneur. But on the leadership standpoint, I'm obviously not new to that, Andrew, from being a CEO and doing all that. I think that the answer is always talk about a way to come back to the beginning. The answer is always curiosity, right? I'm more interested in where you are right now and why you think you're there than I am in wanting to like have this like huge surge come up in me that says like, you should be doing this, do that, don't do this, you know? So that's definitely curiosity and active listening, which I got to be honest is not one, it hasn't been always one of my biggest skill sets, but is one of the ones I'm most interested in shaping. So
in listening to you talk, you helped me form what I think is a more succinct opinion on that same question. I like to just keep it real, right? So I know that I'm never going to be out of bounds from a like moral perspective. I just kind of call Integrity. It how I see it, and like people accept it or they don't accept it, but I'm never trying to like lie, right? I could be wrong the majority of the time, but I'm at least saying how I feel. I think there's two paths. There is this idea of like, am I intentionally getting you to think, or am I manipulating you to act? Right. So am I just saying things that provide thought-provoking thoughts, or am I intentionally twisting your wrist to go in a direction? There's a very fine line between those two things. And depending on how the person on the other side is, they could actually feel the wrong version of that. But I know in myself, and the way that I solve for that is I always preface, this is how I did it. This is how I feel. Do what you want with it. That protects me from the manipulation, twisting the wrist side. This is what I would do if I were you. But like literally do what you want with it. Like, don't trust me. Who am I? I'm an idiot, right? Self-deprecate. Versus provoking like thought. Well, I don't know. Have you thought of this? Like questioning. Right? So yeah, that's an interesting line to think about.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to take a break and have like you were listening to me, and then I get to listen to you too, because it gives you that very thing that you want, right? Which is, how do I breathe for a second, consider the implications of an actually pretty challenging question, and really, what is actually coming up for me? What do I want to stand by? And I do think that anytime you're in a situation where you have a client, or in this case, like somebody you're coaching, or a therapist actually having a patient, you can't, like, it does actually seem like you can't come anywhere near manipulation, even if you could see some way that it would have some greater good, because it's completely, to me, it's the immediate erosion of the thing that already people criticize enough, which is this idea of having power over somebody, and the ultimate, like, this is why therapists are bad. God, I've seen that blog a million times. And you know what? There are therapists that do bad work. So, I understand why some of that stuff is there. So I think you actually, no matter what, that's got to be like the one thing you keep sacred, right? It's a sense of integrity. And like, really, somebody knows what I think, and that's actually what I think, and I'm willing to be wrong, but I'm definitely not going to try to play the game of like, all right, this isn't necessarily right, but if I can get them to hear this and they do this, they'll probably be happier. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not interested in playing God.
Yeah, that's not me. Nah.
Okay, this has been so awesome. Any last questions or curiosities before we go? No. Okay, listen, Bill, this is actually a thing that has to happen. We all have to end up at a dinner table at some point.
Damn right.
So just try to remember when you're going for your next, speech, you're doing like the circuit, you're getting on stage in front of all those people. Let us know what cities those might be. You never know. Andrew's traveling. I'm traveling. I can see it. Like it's cheesy, but I like to be cheesy. I feel like the three of us are going to have an incredible meal together at some point. And so we should keep our minds and our schedules open. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. Your responses, being present. God, we had some really great conversation.
I share all the love back. I look forward to connecting at some point, whether it be Savannah, New York City, Tennessee, doesn't matter. Thank
LA,
you.
Baby.
I left LA out. My camper vibes got me. I don't think of those types of cities. Just kidding. Thank you.
No, we're actually going to have to go another 10 minutes now to talk about the defense of Southern California. So, Andrew, let's make time. No, I'm kidding. We'll figure it out. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
+1.